So let's come to the next one. Question, how many metric tons of bananas does Ecuador export each year? That's a more interesting one. I assume most likely none of you have ever thought about this. So I want to give you a few minutes to think about the decomposition. And here is really an interesting way of picking one of two big ways of doing the decomposition. How would you break this down to come up with an estimate for the metric tons that Ecuador exports in bananas each year? Agricultural land area, that's actually one of the two ways to do this. Anyone creative enough to come up with the alternative approach to the decomposition? Shipping? Go one step further. What happens after shipping? One step further. So you get the bananas shipped, you get the bananas landed, you get the bananas in stores. What's next? Something that you also can think about estimating. Well, go one step further than supermarkets. It's consumption. So the agricultural land area is based on production, and the second one is based on consumption. And I want to convince you that the one based on consumption is actually the more intuitive way of doing this. So on the left side, you see a decomposition based on production. You think about the production in Ecuador, how many bananas are produced, then you need to think about what percentage is exported versus not. Fair to say the vast majority in Ecuador will be exported, which is probably very different from the banana production in India. But my question is, how intuitive is estimating the production in Ecuador for a US consumer? Unless you're born in Ecuador or have relatives or have visited Ecuador, I'm not sure how I would go after estimating without, at this point, without too much Googling, estimating the production capacity in Ecuador versus consumption. I mean, I'm sure each of you ate a banana, maybe recently. So the consumption is very intuitive for a US consumer. And you need to account for a few things, like, well, we are not only consuming bananas from Ecuador, and Ecuador is not only exporting into the US, but in terms of magnitude, it's something that's pretty straightforward and can easily be accounted for. So my recommendation and my approach here is to estimate the exports, the banana exports from Ecuador, based on consumption and not based on production. So let's see how that looks. So let's focus solely on the US and then go beyond the US at the last step. US population 350 million. One of the key parameters is the next one, banana consumption per person per year. I estimated 2 bananas per person per week, so you got 2 times 52. You can say 1, you can say 3, but the advantage is that this doesn't change the output, the result, in an order of magnitude way. So we now know how many bananas are eaten in the US each year. Question is, what is the average weight of a banana? And since we want metric tons, let's do it in grams. So my estimate is 150 grams per banana. So it's equivalent to 3 bananas per pound. Because we don't want to have grams, we want to have tons. We divide by 1 million. And now there are only 2 more factors in the decomposition, which is not every banana that we buy in the supermarket here and eat is an Ecuadorian banana. what is Ecuador's banana market share? And either you know or you can assume by me picking Ecuador that Ecuador is a major exporter of bananas. And so I assumed that they have a decent market share in this market. It's unlikely that even the biggest exporter has 60, 70% of market share. I couldn't list 10 major banana exporting countries, so 10% is probably too low. So I landed at 33%. And now, obviously, Ecuador is not only exporting into the US, it's exporting into other countries, including Europe, China. So what is the US share of the banana market? Well, one way to look at this would be similar to the US share in a number of markets, and that is 1/3. So to account for European and rest of world imports, you divide by 1/3 or you multiply by 3. And when you do this, you come up with 5.4 million metric tons that Ecuador exports. The actual number from the Ecuadorian Agricultural Trade Organization in 2023 is 6.2 million metric tons. So even if you picked slightly different component estimates, 1 banana per year, 3 bananas per year, you probably will get the weight of a banana right. I gave you an argument why the Ecuadorian market share should be substantially above 10%, but not going up to 50, 60. So you will be roughly in the right range if you use this logic of 1/3 market share. And then the share of the banana market, well, maybe it's not 1/3, maybe it's 1/4. But if you multiply these numbers, and especially if you pick a low estimate for one and a higher estimate for another, then whatever your deviation and your error is typically evens out. You will be able to get pretty close to what the actual number is for a problem that I assume you had no reason to ever consider you wanted to solve. And probably without this method, most people would fall into, when I showed you the 3 ways you should not be doing this, either the first or the third one. The first is just saying a big number that sounds like a big number without any clear justification for it. But what most people probably would do is to say, I don't know, how can I know? I really don't know how to approach this. And I hope I showed you that even for what seems like a question that you shouldn't be able to solve, you can come to a very good estimate when it comes to the Ecuadorian banana exports. Yeah, I don't know about the Chiquita versus non-Chiquita market shares in Seattle, but I'm sure that across the US, Ecuador is catching up to their 1/3 market share.